everyone. Today I'm going to be talking about intelligibility of speech, the importance of looking at a child's intelligibility, and then what do we do with that percentage, and when is that percentage too low? So intelligibility is the extent to which a child is understood, and that's expressed in a percentage. So a speech pathologist will generally, when they are evaluating your child, they will generally look at 100 words in a 100-word sample, a speaking sample, and they will say, okay, I could clearly understand 80 of those words out of the 100, and therefore your child is 80% intelligible. That's how we will do it for a number for our evaluations. However, I will never ask a parent to get a pen and paper out and start tracking down all of the utterances that are understood. It's a lot of work, and I would never expect that. However, I will ask my parents to give me a guesstimate. So is your child about 25, 50, 75, 100%? Is that the amount that they are understood by you? Which percentage? Again, usually in those 25 increments. And from there, I will compare the parent's perception of percentage of intelligibility as well as my perception. Now, these percentages are going to be very different, and that's completely normal because I, as the speech pathologist possibly evaluating the child for the first time, am an unfamiliar listener. And this means that I do not see this child every day. I am not in tune with who they are, the way that they speak. So therefore, I'm not going to understand as much as the parent does. The parent, on the other hand, is a familiar listener. They spend every day with them, they know what certain words mean, and it's really important to have both of these numbers because they will be so different and because you're really measuring a perception, not a standardized measurement, right? So it's important to compare these. Now, I'm going to go over some norms, but I want you guys to be aware that these norms are really meant to be benchmarks. So they're meant to guide us, especially speech therapists that are evaluating, into where your child is based on their age. And if their intelligibility is significantly lower than we would expect, that could be justification for providing services. So a two-year-old we expect to be between 50 and 75% intelligible. So that means 50% to 75% of the words they say are understood. Now, again, this is very broad, right? So 50% is most likely going to be more so the unfamiliar listener, and then 75% will be more so the familiar listener. 3-year-olds. When the child gets to 3, it just bumps right up. We want them to be between 75 and 100%. Now, I know what you're thinking when you hear me say 100%. How in the world is anyone 100% intelligible? Again, this is a benchmark. This is a place that you want to be around. I actually usually verbally tell my parents when I'm explaining this, I look for kids to be around 90 to 100% intelligible. There's been a lot of different studies on intelligibility and a lot of different numbers that have been kind of told to and reported, and it's anywhere between 90 and 100% because there always has to be room for error, right? So again, on the lower end, 75 is more unfamiliar, and 100% closer to 100% would be a familiar listener for a 3-year-old. By 4 years old, we want them to be pretty close to 100% accurate. Now here again, I give a lot of leeway. So I say still between around 90 to 100%, and that's for both unfamiliar and familiar listeners. And that is the amount of time that they are understood, and that's pretty normal. So why is this important to do? It's important because when we're looking at speech sounds, the speech sounds that a child acquires are all at different ages. So a child is not, for example, going to have their R's and L's and THs when they're 2 years old yet. So that's going to impact their intelligibility. However, a lot of times there are very normal substitutions that children make for these sound errors. So for example, an L sound. If they're not able to say the L sound yet, they might say Yn for lion or Yin. They might substitute that L for a W or a Y. And that's a pretty normal substitution. So when the child says this though, when I'm marking down my intelligibility, I understood what that was. So although the sound was incorrect, I understood the word because again, it's a pretty normal substitution and I still know that they mean lion. So again, this intelligibility may be a lot higher than their actual speech sound production is. And I like to look at the intelligibility because that's my first goal with looking at any child is, can they effectively communicate? What is impacting their ability to communicate? Is it their speech sounds? Or if their intelligibility is lower and their speech sounds are higher, which I have had in the past. So think of children speaking at the word level. They're able to say a lot of really strong sounds, but then when they start getting into sentences, they're still in what we call a jargon stage or baby talk stage. And they're stringing together all of their sounds and all their words, and it's really not making a lot of sense. So in that case, I'm going to target my goals more so based on intelligibility versus specific speech sounds. So it's just really important for us and for parents to know, again, what you're targeting. Are you targeting specific speech sounds or are you targeting increasing their overall intelligibility? And that's a whole nother side. We do this through a variety of things, through pacing, through carrier phrases, and your speech pathologist will work with you if that intelligibility goal is something you are working on. The last thing I wanted to talk about with intelligibility is words that children say, like lion, when they're substituting, even though you can understand it, please give them the real word. So when your child says lion for a lion, don't go, yes, a lion. That's not a really productive model. I know that baby talk is cute and them saying a little lion is so cute and we love to talk to them like that. However, we want to be a good and positive model for them and we want to give them the correct sound because that's how children learn, is from models and being in their environment with language rich and correct sounds happening in the words around them. So when your child does say that for lion, you can just say to them, yes, a lion. You can even over enunciate that sound so they're seeing it, especially if they're attending to your face. I talk about this all the time. Children attending to your mouth and your face are such good visual cues for those sounds. So again, that's something I feel really strongly about because I feel like a lot of parents sometimes do enforce it with the incorrect production. And that's okay when your baby is like really little. But again, by the time they get to about 2, we really, and even before that, I would prefer if you really start to give them the appropriate production because we want them to learn the right way to say things, right? So I hope that makes sense to everyone here. And again, the intelligibility is just a really important piece in your child's overall speech production. And it is important to make sure that we look at it separately to speech sounds. We may be looking at both, but it really does go into place when your child may not be communicating effectively. Let me know if you guys have any questions.